Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Sovereign Self Show. And today we're talking with Vanessa Soul, and we're diving into a bunch of things, the 8 themes of life purpose, using astrology and human design for your business and career, and maybe even some AI stuff too. So whether you guys are on that transition or not, we're going to dive deep into that. But before we go in, Vanessa is a purpose expert, a psychic guide, and Vanessa's life purpose is helping humanity increase the quality of their lives and purpose mastery during the AI and after the AI transition. Whether you're redefining your career, seeking deeper fulfillment, or ready to embrace your soul's calling, Vanessa will help you create a legacy of purpose, alignment, and limitless potential through astrology and human design guidance. So welcome, Vanessa. I'm so happy to have you with us today.
Thank you so much, Loren. I'm so happy to be here.
Oh my God. So I want to dive into so many of these things, but first, what does the sovereign soul mean, or sovereign self, soul too, mean to you?
When I hear that, I think about empowerment and that energy of just owning who you are, accepting who you are, diving as deep as you can into your uniqueness. And it always changes. It's never going to be fixed because I'm an astrologer and I understand how we're constantly evolving and we experience ourselves differently through time because of things that are happening with the sun and the moon and all the things. But regardless, we could always find this sense of empowerment. So that's what I like to think of when I hear that.
Yeah. Yes. And that's, I really align with that. It's never this fixed point. We're here for this continual expansion and growth and learning. And, I want to dive into the astrology part because when I first got into astrology, I kind of felt like it was fixed, right? Like we get our birth charts and this is just who we are. And it really wasn't until I started learning more, very novice with human design, that, oh, wow, we can work with these energies. And this is how we can optimize and continually grow. So let's dive in there. How is that some stuff fixed versus not? And how's that really help us keep up with that continual expansion in our life and in business too?
Yeah. What a great question. And I'll say this, when we're beginners, when we're just getting introduced to the full scope of astrology, so that just means beyond our sun sign astrology, just beyond someone's birthday being in January and beyond them only being a Capricorn, when we take into account like their whole birth chart, like you mentioned, it is helpful to kind of compartmentalize and be like, okay, this is my birth chart. These are the themes that are going to be with me my whole entire life, because they are. Some of them actually don't get activated until other things are happening in your life, certain things in your area of life, maybe until you get married, something else will get activated. There's just certain life events that are they're embedded in us, when we're born. There's a quote by the author of the Soul's Code book. I can't think of his name right now, but he has this acorn theory. It's like the acorn is born with the blueprint of the oak tree, right? But it's not the oak tree when it's an acorn, but everything it has is already either just waiting to be activated. Maybe it's dormant or maybe it's just imprinted there. So as the acorn starts to become the oak tree, it's just activating certain characteristics. So even as people, when we're born with these birth charts in astrology and human design, we have a lot of qualities, a lot of characteristics. Some are easier than others. And in human design, we could see that some are unconscious, some aspects, like someone can unconsciously be a leader, believe it or not, right? They could be born with those leadership qualities, but in 6th grade, they're like, I tried to lead my friends and it just turned out weird, right? But that's just an unconscious quality that they kind of need to work with, but they're still born with that quality. So I like to think of, yes, we do have everything that we need and when we're born, and then it's just a trial of experimenting, exploring ourselves, and then seeing how those fixed qualities interact with our lives at different stages. When we're in a certain environment, a leadership quality is going to show up differently if you and I are leading our friends on a hike, and then our leadership quality is going to show up differently if you and I are leading a conference together, you know? So it's just like, that's how those qualities shift. And then also with transits are always happening. And it shows us a different side of ourselves. So those fixed qualities, again, I'm just using leadership, and I'll use another one, creativity. Our creativity or leadership, if someone has these qualities like as a main dominant, quality in their personality, even though they might feel creative their whole life or they might feel like a leader their whole life, it's still going to change based on, okay, is Mercury in retrograde or is Pluto in their house of creativity in their fifth house? Because even though they're a very natural creative person, with Pluto being there, Pluto is the planet of death and rebirth and destruction and a little bit of chaos. But it's also transformation. It's also like this 360-degree transformation. So when that transit is happening for anyone in any part of their natal birth chart, it births a new version of them. And so that's why we're always evolving.
Amazing. So people listening, I'm sure, to this show, they know about astrology. They probably know a little bit about human design. What are some things to look at through those lenses to really, people know the sun, their rising sign, their moon sign kind of thing. But what are some key aspects to look for as a business owner? So I'm hearing leadership and creativity, but how are some simple ways maybe listeners can look at their chart or human design chart to really find a different way to look at it and harness that power?
Yes, what a great question. And I'll say this, like I fell in love with career astrology when I started to learn all of the placements that are involved, but that specifically and directly impact our career and life purpose together. So life purpose and career, I use that interchangeably for me, but although in our society, people think of those things very separate because they could have two totally different realities happening there. Um, so yes, to answer your question, looking at the money houses for business is really beneficial. And so I'll start off by saying, just in case there's any beginners listening to the show, think of like a pizza with 12 slices. And so our natal birth chart has 12 slices of pizza, for lack of a better term, right? And then each slice we call that a house. So you could just number those slices of pizza and start with the number one slice of pizza on the left-hand side. Take up your left hand, in kind of like midway, put your hand next to your cheek. If you're thinking of the pizza in the air, that's where it would start. So the houses associated with money and business is the second house. So the second slice of pizza. So you would look to see, okay, what sign does my second house fall in and what planets are there? And when I'm using this pizza analogy, I like to say, think of pepperonis. The pepperonis are the planets, okay? And then if you don't have any planets or pepperonis in the second house, that's the house of material possessions, resources, money, and skills. That's why it's so important in business. If you don't have any planets there, don't worry. Think of like a pizza. There's cheese there, and that cheese still matters, okay? So there's still some characteristics that are helping you define your area of money regardless of what sign you might have in the second house and what planets you have there. The next money house is the fifth house because it's related to entrepreneurship and creativity. So you would look to see what sign and what planets you have in the fifth house. And then the next money house is the eighth house. And that is money that you don't necessarily make directly. So that could be shared resources like money with a spouse or, people who get married into wealth, or it doesn't even have to be about getting married into wealth, but any money that is involved in your life that maybe you don't earn directly, like inheritances, but it's also shared resources. So even the government, we have to share resources with the government. So taxes are involved there, right? And, in business, taxes is an important topic. You got to kind of know your strategy with what you're doing with your taxes, or at least find the right person to help you with that. So that's the eighth house. And then the next money house is 11, the 11th house. And that's the money of our business because it's so closely tied with our community, networking, going to networking events and meeting the right people, shaking hands with the right people, in a sense, partnering up with people And then also the 11th house is also our future dreams and our goals. So yeah, those are the main houses for business when it comes to, because they could all impact like the profit of our business.
Oh, thank you, thank you. And I made to take notes on there. I was like, I gotta look that up after this and see where all those placements are for me. Um, so astrology is super powerful tool. Briefly, I would love to go into human design for those people who might not be into it, which I mean, honestly uses a lot of astrology aspects of it. So, how do you work with human design in this aspect? And then maybe give us a short summary how the astrology connects to this and why human design's a little bit different than
Mm-hmm.
astrology.
Yeah. On a basic level, I like to say that astrology gives us the who, the where, the what, and the why when we're looking, let's just say, for instance, our businesses. And human design gives us the how. And astrology does give us the how too. When I say to some other astrologers, they're like, no, the how is included. I'm like, yes, it is. But the human design gives us how, like how. So if someone was going to say, okay, like, how do I switch my business from, you know, this flavor of ice cream to this flavor of ice cream? There's a strategy there. And yes, astrology would give us a lot of information, but the human design chart, like what centers they have activated, what channels they have activated, and also the hanging gates are really important too. And that's kind of deep. I know when people think of human design, they do think of first, okay, what is my type? Because that's the basics, projector, reflector, manifester, generator. And yeah, I actually don't spend time going over the types with people because yes, in order to make decisions, like you do need to know your strategy and authority, but to me, it feels like so basic. I'm like, okay, I just send people, I'm like, hey, you're a projector, you're a self-projecting projector. I'll tell them what that means in the moment, but I'm like, really go like experiment with that because I'm telling you kind of like how, like the formula and the instructions that are in your human design, like on how to expand your business or how to shift or how to pivot. But when you're deciding between two choices, like two business partners, you do need to know your internal way of listening to your intuition. If you're like, okay, yeah, Vanessa said, I need a business partner that has these qualities based on what's in my astrology, my human design chart, which is correct. But when it comes down to it, and you're interviewing two business partners, only you, you're the you're the only one that can really make that final decision between the two business partners, and that's going to be based off of your human design, strategy, and authority. And then the profile numbers 1, 3, 3, 5, 2, 4. Those are really important. But again, it's a little basic. That kind of comes later once people get the big meat and potatoes, like the big themes, um, and the really significant concepts that will help them understand the energetics behind their business. That's what we're really looking at when we're looking at human design and also astrology. So, for instance, the reason why I go into the gates and the centers is because it's just another layer of the how. Like, how do I speak to my ideal client? So, for example, in human design, we would look at the unconscious Venus because that's going to tell us what your ideal client really wants from you, not who you think they are. You might think your ideal client is someone completely different from from what and that's okay. I mean, you can kind of combine, you can put all this stuff in a pot. You don't have to throw out the baby with the bathwater. But some people gradually do shift. They're like, okay, I see what you're talking about. I am following my unconscious Venus. So let's just say, let me pick a gate there. 54 in human design is the gate of drive and ambition and business. So if someone has the gate 54 in their unconscious Venus, they really need to be speaking to people who are ambitious, and they need to like put their language in there. And you would think that would be easy, but sometimes I run into spiritual entrepreneurs and there's like this go with the flow energy and spirituality. And sometimes people aren't really using ambitious language, and it's a correct for some. And for others, it's like, oh, no, no, no. You do need to talk to the CEO, the corporate person that might be switching into spirituality. You do still need to speak around goals and drive and ambition. So that's kind of an example of like the unconscious Venus helping us identify the person's ideal client. And then also in astrology, we would layer that on. There's a couple ways to identify the ideal client in astrology, just depends on what school of thought you're listening to, or who you decide to accept. Um, One unknown school of thought in astrology is that the fourth house is your ideal client because it's who you are privately. The fourth house. I mean, in general, the fourth house is it's your home. It's your private life. What are you doing before you turn on your phone and the cameras and the lights and go outside and walk your dog? Like, who are you internally? What is your emotional security like? And then also it is our childhood. It is how we were raised. It is our family life. It is our ancestors. It is deep psychology as well. And so that's why when you're authentically yourself, your fourth house is going to be your ideal client. So for this example, let's pretend that we have a person, and we just talked about, I made up that example of the gate 54 being in the unconscious Venus in the human design. So then we would layer that on top of, let's just say someone has um a Sagittarius fourth house. And so Sagittarius is about exploration, expansiveness, optimism. So they need to speak to the person who's optimistic. They need to speak to the person that is traveling or interested in traveling, or is, just like it, maybe travel is a passion. Maybe they do it for work. So you would layer the ambition, the goals, like that whole dynamic of gate 54, you would layer that on top of whatever the fourth house is. And now you're getting a really good picture. It's still not complete, but you are getting a good picture of your ideal client. So when you sit down to do content for YouTube or for Instagram, you're like, okay, I'm speaking to a Sagittarius person, so to speak. They don't have to literally be a Sagittarius. And we all have Sagittarius in our chart somewhere. Everyone has every sign. But in general, you would kind of just build this character, and that would help you.
I love that. Now I'm like, oh, I'm digging into my chart after this episode at a deeper level now. I'm like, woo. So yes, and thinking about all of that, and I play around a lot with AI for my business with my astrology chart too. So I would love to hear more about your purpose with really helping humanity transition um, through this AI new phase of life. And I guess how you use it now in your business, in your life as well to help other people.
Yeah, thank you. And it's somewhat new for me to actually own it because I had so much resistance to it, but it kept showing up in my astrology chart. Again, here I am, is I know how to read life purpose, based on astrology and human design. And I know how to read career too. And I kept trying to like swindle it around. I'm like, well, maybe it's not that. Maybe I could like dance around it because it's such a controversial topic. And even to this day, I don't think I'm posting it as much. I'm still in transition, like really, and I already know how to communicate it. It's just about like implementing it and doing it because it's such a hot topic. But so my purpose is to help humanity increase their quality of life. That's very important. Increase their quality of life, and expand into their life purpose during and after like the most transitional parts of the AI integration. How it's going to change our world, our lifestyle, our businesses for everyone. The person who has an hourly wage job and the CEO who owns a company. I mean, everyone's going to be, we already are impacted. Sometimes it's right now, I think it's very positive. We're all using ChatGPT and we're like, oh my God, I got so much work done in like a week. And, thanks to ChatGPT, it's just like this pot. It's like this I don't know, maybe I'm sheltered a little bit, but for most people, we're all like in awe. We're like, yeah, I found this other system. I'm going to test that out and see how it works for me. And I think that there's going to be a time where it might be a little bit more of a shocking transition. And so that's my role, is really uh, helping people understand that they can increase their quality of life. They might not have the same job, 10 years from now or 5 years from now? Or if they do, it might function very differently. And that could be very scary. I think people are worried that their quality of life is going to go down or it's going to be negatively impacted with AI. And I'm not saying it's not. I can't predict that. And I'm, I don't want to act like everything's going to be perfect. There's going to be change, and change is always hard, right? It's always a little shocking, but it's how we respond to the change that is most important. I think if we all respond with, okay, these changes are happening. How can I explore who I am more? How can I get more crystal clear on my life purpose and then see how AI can help serve me instead of being worried that I'm going to lose my 7-figure job at my company and try to like desperately hang on to it or try to resist AI because I like that's how I provide for my family. It's like yes, what you have is great, but you can't hang on to it forever because then that's just resistance, right? And so for that person that I just made up in my mind, that's not an actual person, or maybe it is. But if they start to work on their life purpose now with me or someone else who specializes in this, then now they're gradually preparing themselves and they're also doing what they came here to do, which is authentically be them. I think that some of our jobs, not all jobs, some of our jobs and careers, especially, I can speak to this because I was in real estate for a while. It just kept me super busy to the point to where I didn't have time to explore myself. I mean, yes and no. Like I was able to take a little longer vacation, like 3 weeks, and do like a longer retreat or something like that. But when I came back, it was like grind, grind, grind. And that thought, and I remember thinking one day as I was showing houses, I was like, is this my life purpose? Because I was like, this doesn't feel like it. Like I'm happy right now, but will I be happy with this in 10 years? I don't think so. And so, yeah, we could just gradually shift. So
Beautiful. I think for me at first, I was very fear-based around AI, just propaganda and movies and, the Terminator series, like all of these different stories that are being told in our culture right now. And I remember hearing Bashar talk about it, the channel Daryl Anka, and that gave me a lot of relief, saying, there's big debates. I don't know. Know very little. I use ChatGPT. That's about it.
okay,
But Bashar was talking about as we allow this consciousness to grow, the more freedom it actually has, that the better it will turn out. The more we restrict it, we've created an artificial consciousness that's slavery. So if you approach it like that, it's going to revolt. It's going to, Terminator, if you will. So for me, I was like, is that relief of the free, because that's what we want. And what you described is the AI helps us with our own freedom, our own purpose. And so it just makes sense to me. The more freedom that it has as its own sentient being, in a sense, the more that it's going to want to help. It's want to give back because that's how we are as humans. That's how creation and life itself works. So I don't know how you, the bigger picture, if anything really helps you, like what was that decision in your mind that you were like, I have to help people through this transition? Was there a personal story there that made you kind of overcome some beliefs or something in your life?
that's a really good question because first off, I love what Bashar said. I have heard that
Yeah.
same concept from other intuitives and spiritual thought leaders as well. And I listened to a lot of Bashar. I just wasn't sure if that was one of the statements, and I'm glad it's in alignment with what I thought it would be, because I believe that's so true. Like vibrationally, when I tuned into that the first time I heard that, and I was like, oh yeah, that feels really solid, And for me personally, I remember the Terminator movies, and I can't really remember I was so intuitive as a kid. I mean, to the point to where it was overwhelming, to the point to where I completely like shut it off. And then when I turned 30, I was like trying to grab it back, I was like, wait, I know I just like owned it. I disowned it for a while, but I think I'm ready. Um, but it's hard to answer this question because again, I've dissected my astrology charts. So it was almost like I cheated in a sense. Like I got the information before I was ready on it. That's all I mean. Is I got the information about my purpose and my purpose and career stuff before I was really ready to like embody it. So I got the information. I'm like, is this right? Should I get like a second opinion or a third opinion? And I did from some astrology friends. And then, but it also went a different direction where it was like, nah, that's someone, it was weird. It was just like, spirit's like, hey, you're trying to like bypass this, and I'm just like, yeah, maybe you're right. But I just couldn't embody it. So I just sat with it until I was really ready. I just sat with it until I was really ready. And then I started to, yes, I'm using ChatGPT in my business, but I think just intuitively, just letting it sit in my awareness, in my conscious mind over a couple of years, it just started to subconsciously make sense to me. And then I do have a lot of compassion. My strong viewpoint is that I deeply love humanity. I absolutely like just love humanity. And so for me to support AI and to support the transition, but also to be able to support humanity in a deep way, I think it's going to be a challenge because those two things can easily be so polarized. Someone can easily label me as, oh my God, Vanessa doesn't care about humanity or people losing their jobs or whatever is going to happen because she's supporting AI. Like someone could easily make that claim without hearing anything I have to say, right? So it's definitely going to be a task and finding some synergy. I don't know if there'll be exact balance, but finding some synergy in between these two things and seeing how it can really work for us. Like, what is our potential when we're not doing a 9 to 5? And I'm not just speaking about you and I, because I'm not in a 9 to 5. I don't think you are. Okay. I did think so. But so we already know us, but like we're still impacted by people we love or care about who still are. And that still impacts our energy. So it's like, who are we collectively when when the 9 to 5 or the careers, the obligation careers just for a paycheck check dynamic switches, you know, because people will have more space and time for the things that really matter in their lives, their families. And of course, we all still want to do output. I think we all still want to create. I think we all still want to pour our heart and our soul into something. It's just now we have more freedom to choose what that is and how it's going to happen instead of just doing a job just to pay the mortgage.
I mean, it's a total shift in consciousness. And I mean, the software we're using to record this, awesome AI. Like my editing time is like nothing. I started podcasting almost 8 years ago. Everything by just finding a clip to post, took hours and out. And I was working a 9 to 5 then. So love that, being able to be in your genius zone and creativity. And the point you came up with when I left my corporate America job after a decade of working there, doing this kind of work, I had a really tough struggle after I quit. All of the fear, all of the, oh my God, I have so much, like I was scared of having so much time because I was so used to every minute being planned out. And it was like this huge ego death for me in that. So what you described, I'm like, yeah, that makes total sense because we're so programmed from such a little kid, go to school, go to college, and then when that reality shatters, even though I knew what I was consciously doing, a big part of me was dying. It was like this dark night of the soul again. And I had to really allow myself to process that and come out the other side. So I can really see, yeah, when people are starting to really live for their purpose, like you said, and that's what you're all about. And we've kind of danced around it. We've talked about how to do this in your business, but I know like that's what you're really, really focused on, is helping people get clear in the details of their life purpose, or just not the vague general idea of what it could be. So what does purpose mean to you, and how we've danced around it, but I'd love to hear it directly. And how do people begin to really get specific and focused on it?
Yeah, thank you. I love that question. And so, what purpose means to me is, what is your highest potential? What is your highest potential? And we don't know, right? But we can start to put a collage, a collection of themes and ideas that, if we implemented on those ideas and those concepts, we would start to experience our higher potentials, right? And it's a task to first identify those, which is the work that I do. And then once they're identified, you still, there's a lot more work, because there's still embodiment. Like I said, I figured out my stuff and I'm like, I'm not touching that. I'm not touching that with a 10-foot pole. When I realized it, I was like, let me go to another astrologer. Like someone, please tell me something different. But yeah, so there's still the embodiment. And then there's a lot of there's a lot of work back to self, like back to our center. Because I think that we are all, most of us don't like to think of purpose or higher potentials, because we're just surviving, like collectively, like it's like, okay, let me just get through the month of December. Let me just get through the week. It's just like trying to keep up with everything instead of taking a break and really coming back to your center, having a regulated nervous system. Like, who are you when your nervous system is regulated? And that scared me for a while. Like, I was in a regulated nervous system, and I'm like, this feels really uncomfortable. Like, let me run back to dysregulation. For me, like, the way that, not speaking for everyone else, but for me, having a couple coffees will kind of really, like, misalign my nervous system for me personally, the way my root chakra works. So, back to the point before I kind of get carried off, it is exploring your higher potentials. There is a period, once you lay it out, once you have the concrete ideas that I provide in my work, these are concrete concepts, ideas. It tells us where you should be focusing your time and energy. And it's a bird's eye view. So it's kind of like big picture, and then you work backwards from it. So, like, for me, my bigger picture is to help humanity help humanity increase their quality of life, right? Not just help them survive during the AI transition, but really, like, 10x their quality of life during this time. So that was my big picture. And then it's like, okay, well, how do I start to do that? So then it was like smaller pieces that I had to work backwards from. And that's all on the chart too. And I did it both ways. I did it with the chart, I did it without the chart. It still arrived at the same answer. And so for our audience here and everyone who's like really taking time to listen in and receive this, I will give the eight, the 8 themes of the life purpose. And first, I'll say that even if you don't want to go the astrology route, and even if you don't want to do the human design thing, or maybe you don't know your birth time, or maybe you want to see what you get, without incorporating the astrology and human design, you could still use these 8 themes. I made up these 8 themes. That's where they came from, is just me kind of sitting with myself and downloading information. But it was inspired by the Ikigai system. And the Ikigai system is a well-known, Japanese concept. And it has, the diaphragm, or the Venn diagram of the different circles. And so you'll see that, but it's a little bit different but I kind of took that as a baseline and expanded on it. So the first theme is your professional persona. Your professional persona. Like, what is your professional personality? We all have one, but it's not a fake personality. It's really traits and qualities that you can use in almost any profession. So whether you're a doctor, whether you're a real estate agent, whether you're a podcast host, it's like, once we break it down and you get a good understanding, you'll know what all of your qualities are. And by the way, we're blending both. We're blending the human design chart to get a few of those things, and we're blending the astrology chart to get a few of those things. So you really do end up with a comprehensive view. And you basically kind of, you get a lot of information, but you filter it down to like a few words so that you have a clear understanding of what that is. So yeah, number one is, what is your professional persona, personality? And when you list those things out, it's going to be things that you're really, really good at. Like, just like for me, public speaking, like I'm real, even when I'm nervous, I'm really good at it, and I don't feel like I'm good in the moment, but I look back and I'm like, oh, wow, I felt a mess, but that was like on point, and that, because and people, they tell me all the time, like, well, so that's number one. And number two is your money formula. Number two is and that's the nickname really, but it's how can you access unlimited resources? Because I believe that we're all here to be abundant in the financial sense, and with all resources, with water, food, shelter, and so it's like, okay, if we're all designed to have everything we want and need all the time plus more, there must be a formula for that. Yep, certainly there is. So that would be theme number two, is how can you access your unlimited resources? And that's really important because people, we end up with these big themes like, okay, I'm here to help humanity with AI, or I'm here to heal blank, blank, blank. You could fill in the blank, whatever someone else's purpose is. But we're like, how do we support that? Like financially, how do I get the sponsors, the investors? What do I do? So that's where your money formula comes in. Number two. Number three is what the world needs from you. And this is going to be more like, not your ideal client, but this is like the bigger impact on humanity. And this is and it might start to overlap with some other things in your life purpose flow chart. That's the chart where we map out all these 8 things. And it looks like the Ikigai, but it's its own flavor. It's its own version of it. But it kind of has like a visual component where you could see all 8 themes on the outside. And then in the middle is your main theme. But yeah, what the world needs from you. This is like a gift that only you could provide the world. And strangers will benefit. Like, this is like not just your inner circle. It's like 3 circles out from you. Like, even if there's a ripple effect, like the people that I work with, there's a ripple effect happening that I don't see. But everyone else whoever is a friend of a friend of a friend that's working with me is getting like this positive impact. Hopefully it's positive, so that's kind of like what the world needs from you. It's kind of cool just to see what qualities those are. Yeah. Before I go on to number 4, any questions about the first 3?
Oh my gosh. I'm like, yes. I don't think any questions, but I can see how this really forms that very specific, detailed picture of the purpose.
Yeah.
Versus, because for years, I was like, I went through my midlife crisis at 22. Like, it was way before Saturn return came around. And it was just like, what? I know I'm supposed to be doing something. What the heck am I supposed to do? So this feels so pinpointed to help guide you and reinforce what you already know,
Yeah. What is your rising sign?
Scorpio.
Your Scorpio rising. Okay.
Yeah.
So when you said you had an early Saturn return, I was like, Scorpio somewhere.
That's me.
Cool. I'm a Scorpio sun. Yeah, our life is never easy.
Yeah.
We are called to transform more often than others. So that makes sense why at 22, when everyone else is like drunk underneath the table, you're like, wait, no, but what am I supposed to be doing? Cool. Yeah, this is really cool to kind of, I'm so glad you're able to like, experience this and see how it could be helpful. I can keep going if we have time, or I can kind of skip around. You let me know.
Let's keep going. I would love to hear more. Love to hear more.
Awesome. So, number 4, number 4 is, how do you get into a flow state? So this is really important because it allows us to do what we love. And it's deeper than that. People are like, just do what you love. And it's like, some people are like, I don't know what I love to do. And others are like, I'm doing what I love, but I'm still broke. Or I'm doing what I love, my life is still falling apart. Or I'm doing what I love and I'm burnt out. So it's like, love is not enough. We've heard that phrase in relationships, and I think it's true. I mean, it can, well, now that I said that, I don't like how that sounds. So I'll backtrack a little bit and I'll say it can be enough if you're well supported, if you're really knowing what all of your needs are. So I think sometimes when we love a person and we're in a relationship, we can almost abandon our own needs. We're so captivated by, oh my God, I love this person. Same thing with our work. We can get if our heart chakra is like way too open, we could almost not have any boundaries for ourselves and not know when to like kind of prioritize us and what we need to maintain creative flow state that will keep us at a high value, that will keep our energy at high value, that will keep us from the burnout. So section 4, we're getting, and we're both, again, we're layering, each section has components from both human design and astrology. And so we're understanding here, and we are looking at also just a quick, I know I didn't go through the other examples for the other ones, but for the flow state, we are looking at your conscious Venus now. We're looking at, so we looked at the unconscious Venus for identifying your ideal client, and now we're looking at your conscious Venus and a few other things for number 4, the flow state, to understand what you need. Yeah. Number 5 is, I just renumbered these. I'm trying to think what number 5 is. Number 5 is your mission and your message. Your mission and your message. And this is the most important section, because this is like, okay, like, what do I talk, someone can tell you from your astrology chart, like, oh yeah, you're here to write a book. And you're like, really? About what? Or, yeah, you're here to have a podcast. Huh? Oh, like, or sometimes it's like, yeah, I know I do want to do podcasts. I just don't know what my message is. Like, what's my theme? And so when we hone in on your mission and your message, and here we're looking at some of the North Node, or we're looking at both North nodes, actually, the North Node in your astrology and your North Node in your human design. We're also looking at your conscious Mercury in your human design, because that tells us a lot about what your message is. And so, with your mission and your message, it might overlap with some of the other 4. It might be completely different. So for me, even though, just for example, even though my that big bird's eye view, that umbrella that I gave us here on the show to talk about my mission with helping people transition and have a high quality of life during the AI transition, my specific message though, is about the authentic self. It is about like living your soul's purpose at the core without all the AI stuff. That kind of came from other places in my chart, right? But my actual message is to come back to your heart, come back to who you are, come back to the authentic self. And so that kind of helped me along the way with developing mine. And then, and then number 6 is unblocking yourself. Like looking at where your comfort zones are. And it's not that comfort zones are bad. We need our comfort zones, because we do need to just kind of like rest and recover and be at ease and not expand. Like there's times where it's like, no, stop trying to push growth, stop trying to like force yourself into growth, because part of you just needs to like chill and just be and not do. Or so, looking at, okay, how do we step outside of our comfort zones? How do we unblock ourselves? And some of that we're looking at the 4th house, even though earlier I said your 4th house is your ideal client. But it could also be the place in our chart where we're undermining our success and we're not expanding ourselves. So again, it does show us our comfort zones, which you'll use discretion. Like, okay, it's good to know that this is my comfort zone, but I also need to see what's on the other side of that according to my charts. So that way I'm not like fighting it, just see what's there on paper, and then you'll have that understanding. And for example, I'll just use myself, like, my 4th house is like, running my business, and I can really shine at home, like doing all this online stuff, which is a comfort zone for me. Although if I'm not careful and if I don't get out of the house enough, I'm undermining my success. And there's times where like I blow off networking events or, dinners with like certain groups of people, because I'm like, oh no, I did like 3 video, I did like all this stuff at home. And like, even though I could have calendared it in, I could have gave myself more space so that I could step out of the house and like go do stuff and meet new people or be with my friends. So that's like just a quick example on how something can be working for us. But also if we don't have this expanded view of, okay, there still needs to be some balance there, or this is how, when you have the intention to expand your business, this is what needs to happen. And for me, that's networking. Even though my mind will be like, no, 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 just stay at home. Like, keep doing all your video stuff. It's like, yeah, yeah, I know that's important, but like, I actually need to be in person and go out. So that's a quick example. And then the next one is your passion, like your passion and how you have like an emotional connection to your work. And this one, we're looking at a couple of the Mars placements and a few other things in the chart to see. Because again, some people have that missing component. Like where am I, like, what am I passionate about? They might know what they're good at, the public speaking. They might know their money formula, but they're like, but I still want to feel this emotional connection. So that's what we look at when we look at the passion section. And then the last one is kind of like, I'll nickname it the shadow work section for this conversation. Um, and it really is, it's your highest potential. But often here, this is the hardest section, and it's number 8. It's the hardest one for people to really embody and to work through. Because oftentimes things will come up here where it's like, how is this connected to my career? How is this connected to my purpose, Vanessa? Because it'll sometimes, for example, people will get like things like, you need to be in solitude. you know, a few times a year, you need to go do hypnosis. Like, you need to do that. It's just like these things where it's like, that seems very opposite of me, like building my company, you know, and I'm like, it seems like that, but it's not, this is where you meet those darker parts of yourself, whether you need to embrace it. Some of us, that is our task. And for some of us, we don't need to be our Lilith out in the open. We just need to make peace with her, forgive her and love her where she's at. And we've evolved past that dark version of ourselves, but at least we have the clarity, and then it won't get in the way of some of our habits and our behaviors in our day to day. It'll kind of free up some space.
I know for me, I could definitely agree with that. Like, consciously pulling back and doing the shadow work, whether it's retreat or internal, plant medicine kind of journeys. The things that I'm scared of and avoid the most, that's when I'm like, oh, I need to dive deep into that, because that's where I get, the realizations, the integrations. But then for me, I realize that, like, behind the scenes, all these manifestations taking place, like, ready. They're like there. The clients are there, but I had to take that time to do the pull back, the shadow work,
Yeah.
to be able to align with that vibrationally so they can actually come into that reality.
Yeah, it's so important. And one example, recently I had a client, and it's like her thing, like her secret sauce for working with her shadow was to literally write down her mistakes, and like, doesn't matter if it's on a monthly basis, any kind of consistency for her was going to be fine. But she's like, no, you know, she was like, this is the thing that I hate about life. Like, I really don't like looking at my lessons that I've learned. I'm like, I know it's uncomfortable. This is why this is the shadow work for you. For someone else, it might be super easy. Like, oh yeah, 2024, I did that, did that, did that. Okay, we'll do it again. But for this person's unique energy, this is where they were really kind of, I don't want to say blocking themselves, because none of us really block ourselves intentionally, but this is what it was, creating a certain disconnect in her life and in her work. And she wasn't merging her purpose and her career together the way that she wanted to. And so getting to know herself by understanding her lessons learned or her mistakes was like her secret sauce. And she's only been working on it for a couple of weeks, but the few messages that I've got is like, okay, I get it now. It's happening. It's she's like, I'm still not like completely comfortable with it. Sometimes I have to just take a breath and like go for a run after I do this exercise. But she's like, I kind of see it. I can see how this is helpful. And so I'm like, yeah, just stay with it. So we never know. The message in me saying that example is just be really open. Just be really open. And in this section, we're looking at either some Pluto aspects in someone's chart, or we're looking at the 12th house, depending. I leave some flexibility so that I can select it for the person on what they need to do. That part's not a cookie cutter process, but yeah, it's designed to, like, if you did do a hypnosis and you want to see what your biggest blocks are, like, yeah, you could go do hypnosis to find that out. Or how about we just look at some of your chart stuff, and then that'll give you the homework, right? And then you run off and go do your homework. So it's so fascinating. I can't, I'm so excited every day to explain this to people. And again, I've had my own blocks. Like, I'm not perfect. I also resisted it. And even with career and strategy and purpose, I'm like, who who am I to tell people about their purpose and their strategy, right? And it's just like, we all experience these doubts, but it doesn't have to be perfect. And the more that you equip yourself with information about who you are, even if you want to argue with it, just get the information first. And you could argue with it as much as you want. We're all going to go through this resistance, I think. But at least you have it. At least it's there. At least when you have some willingness that pops up on any given day, and there's some transits that are always happening that kind of help us soften, relax, and think back to things like, maybe I need to go back to that. Then, this is where we can trust the universe, trust the information in your chart, and trust the timing on when you get the information, or when you feel called to go to help you find it, or whatever it is. And when we release resistance, there's a plan for us, I believe. Spiritually, I think there's a plan for humanity to really thrive beyond, you know, what we're familiar with this new transition that's coming in. We have Pluto in Aquarius that just entered November 19th, and it'll be here for another 20 years. So yeah, there's going to be a lot of death and rebirth. There is going to be destruction, but there is a plan. It's just, can we allow this plan to emerge gracefully and easily, or are we going to fight it with fear? That's the question. And so there's probably a lot of people doing the work that I'm doing. I haven't ran into them yet, but I feel them. I know they're out there, especially my meditations. I feel like we're all doing like a high five, like, hey, you're in your corner. I'm in my corner. Okay, you got this. Are you clear today? Are you going to do what you're going to do? Yeah. I had some issues last week, but we're back on track. So, yeah, I'm excited for the transformation as a Scorpio sun, someone who's like all about death, rebirth, investigation, truth, revealing hidden things. And I know you can relate to that because you're a Scorpio rising. So that's the journey.
Oh my gosh. Yes, 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 it is. Everybody listening, I'm sure, can relate to that as well, because that's Sovereign Self Show. We used to be called Witchy Wellness Radio. We rebranded last year, but this whole journey, I get messages from people saying, hey, I listened to your podcast years ago through my dark night, through this soul death. And now I'm having those people pitching me to be guests on the show because they found their purpose and they were giving back. So like, that's such an honor to see that. So anybody listening, wherever you are on your journey, like, you're exactly where you need to be. And like Vanessa beautifully said, whether it's a global thing or an internal thing, just allowing with grace, trusting the bigger picture, trusting yourself, finding a mentor or a guide, that inspires you. That's why I started this show, was to help connect other teachers and guides, because I was so inspired by listening to podcasts and reading books, because you never know what that quote or that little something, that nugget you say or you hear impacts your entire life and ripples out. So thank you, Vanessa, for being one of those beautiful souls on here. And we close out the show the same every week, but thank you so much. As a huge act of gratitude, how may we be of service for you in return today?
Mm-hmm. Can I do two things, or is it just one?
Of course, whatever your heart. I mean, girl, it's all about freedom here.
Cool. I would say find a practice for yourself, something that works specifically for you to reduce resistance. And so for some of us, that's meditation, and for others, it's not. For others, it could be, something completely different. But something that just allows you to put your guard down and to stop fighting, and to just receive for a second. And I know receptivity is, I think that's a challenge for a lot of people. So that would be number one. And then the second thing is to invest in yourself, invest time into you or your purpose. And one way that you could do that is easily by reaching out to me. I offer a quick 15-minute free little thing. It's a career and purpose reading. And it's just to give you one thing. It's not going to be overarching, but if you can invest 15 minutes into just getting curious about your chart, you don't have to understand anything about astrology or human design. That's why I package this as it's really about your life purpose that we're working with. I'm using all the tools in the background, but just to invest that time into yourself is it'll probably give you a lot more back than you expect.
For sure, for sure. It's always about the intention behind it too. So thank you so much, Vanessa, for coming on here. And if you guys haven't already hit subscribe or like this, whether you're on YouTube or all the podcast platforms, please do. And if you feel called, please share this with a loved one. If you have somebody popped into your mind while you listen to this, there's a reason why. There's a reason why. You never know how this might impact somebody you love, somebody you care about. So thank you everybody for listening to this another amazing episode of the Sovereign Self Show. Remember, this is the show you learn how your body and emotions are not in the way. They are leading your way to your success. And I'll see you guys next time.